We have reached the point of no return in the story of Jimmy McGill. When Better Call Saul started 5 years ago, and it feels like 5 minutes ago, honestly, we started out with two separate storylines centered around Jimmy and Mike. Now, they had a little bit of overlap from time to time, but the cartel world and the law firm world were very far apart. In Bagman, those two worlds come crashing together. The episode begins with setting the cartel world in motion. We have the cousins returning to retrieve Lalo's bail money, and then we have a scene with Lalo and Jimmy. And Lalo is getting better and better by the episode. I enjoy every scene he's a part of. Describing the cousins as good boys was just amazing. I'm going to need to rank the Salamanca family when the show is over. It would be really difficult because even Hector is amazing before he gets put in a wheelchair, but so many good characters in that family. I get the sense that Lalo was baiting Jimmy into taking the job. That's really what Lalo's greatest strength is. He has the ability to hide his true desires under this charming mask, and it's what makes him more dangerous than the likes of Tuco and Hector, who just don't have the patience to observe the actions and the motivations of others. Lalo has a pretty good read on Jimmy at this point, and I think he expected Jimmy to try and make some sort of proposal. For Jimmy specifically, we left off last episode with him declaring he's capable of anything, and now he has an opportunity to take a big risk, make $100,000 in a single day, and he takes it. But telling Kim about this is a massive mistake. Just as big a mistake as Kim going to see Lalo. I would say it's somewhat out of character, but at this point, Jimmy rarely has actual conversations with Kim. He basically uses her as a mirror more times than not, and she nails it completely when she tells him that he's just trying to convince himself that this excursion is going to go smoothly. And his response to Kim is like, well, that'd be okay, which is just a pretty extraordinary response, openly accepting self-deception. But that is where Jimmy is at this point. And their hug at the end of the conversation is very reflective of their relationship and also Jimmy's moral position as well. His slip in Jimmy's side is all in, and the light side of him, which is Kim, she doesn't reject the hug, but she just, sort of stands there and accepts it. When Jimmy steps out in the desert, we get a shot of him wiping dirt off his dress shoes, and that's a little metaphor of the dirt of the criminal world starting to overcome the clean, white-collar lawyer world. And by the end of the episode, he is, of course, covered in dirt. When the delivery goes well with the cousins, it was pretty clear that things were about to degrade quickly. The filmmakers did an excellent job getting us in the car of Jimmy when he stopped so we could experience the event with him. It was a pretty frightening sequence and it felt very realistic, so definite props to those who designed it. The shootout itself was good, but I think the very best part was Jimmy's reaction to it. I'm going to bring this up later with Kim, but for Jimmy, it's all a game until it isn't. You can play around with Lalo and Nacho and maybe get some vague threats, but it's not until you actually see the violence of this world do you understand what you're into. And it was the same way with Walter White. When blood is splattering on you and men are ordering your death, you wake up. And Jimmy has been cruising along too easily until this moment. But after Mike's first kill, he wakes up. I thought for a second it would be the enforcer from Breaking Bad. I think Gaff was his name or something like that, who was surveilling the money for the cartel. But it makes sense for Mike to be out there keeping tabs for Gus. It can feel like Mike is an ex machina at times. I mean, he was hitting some pretty crazy shots, but he's Mike and he was in the military, so I can suspend my disbelief. The writers clearly wanted him and Jimmy out there so they could have their talks, especially Mike's monologue at the end. We also get the very sad death of the Lawyer Cup and the Suzuki, representations of Jimmy McGill. In this episode, so many symbols of Jimmy's good side are eliminated, which makes me think that the writers really wanted this to be the episode where Saul Goodman is born. It's kind of like the Horcrux idea from Harry Potter, how they had to destroy all those objects so they could actually kill Voldemort. That's essentially what's going on here, and it's excellent writing, although it's pretty sad to watch. Jimmy's scene with Mike at night was just gorgeously shot. I love night scenes in every medium, but it's interesting how Mike keeps a green glow stick for himself while giving Jimmy a yellow one. That is not an accident, although I'm not completely sure what the colors are meant to symbolize. The other big moment in the scene is Mike putting on the tinfoil blanket, harkening back to Chuck. Jimmy rejects putting on one himself, and I understand why he wouldn't want to do it, but the image of Jimmy putting on the blanket in that scene specifically, and sort of soaking in the moment of being in Chuck's shoes, it would have been pretty cool, although it's more in character, of course, for him to turn down the offer. Now to Kim. Meeting Lala was the worst decision she's ever made in the show. The sound design of the door locking behind her is perfect because it's not just locking behind her physically, she's locked in with him forever now. And the way Lalo puts together the situation, how he says, well, you're married to him, so you love him, and because you love him, you were worried about him, so you came to me. It was just a magical scene from Dalton. The way Lalo also controls the conversation is phenomenal, waiting for Kim to make her plea, and then leaving the room on his own accord. He is the true master of conversation, and that's been clear since his first meeting with Gus. I have seen a few people say this is an out-of-character move of stupidity from Kim, but it makes sense to me for a couple reasons. First of all, Lalo is in her environment right now, and she is an extremely confident woman. He is under state control. Jimmy is his lawyer. And as I mentioned for Jimmy, until you see the violent nature of this game, you just don't take it seriously enough. And it was a mistake for her to go to him, there's no doubt about that. But I understand it psychologically speaking. And being called Mrs. Goodman, I mean, that was just hilarious to hear, but good Lord, she is in trouble. Because that is the truth. She is not Kim Wexler anymore. She is fully entangled with Saul Goodman, and the story of Saul Goodman does not end well. The ending of the episode says a lot about the story moving forward. First off, Mike revealing to Jimmy why they need to keep on moving was a moment Mike really needed, because becoming a loyal soldier to Gus, it did seem a bit quick, but explaining it as a job he just holds his nose and does for the good of his family, that makes a lot more sense. Then we have Jimmy who decides to get a man killed instead of letting him pass by. There's a quote from 1984, Winston Smith says something like, "There's nothing worse than physical pain." And that rings true here, because there's nothing Jimmy wants more than to relieve his pain, and hey, if someone hunting me gets shot, so be it. And this is a big moment because we know Saul recommends sending people to Belize in Breaking Bad quite often, and although there's still a big jump from here to get to that point, this is a good start in explaining that type of behavior. Finally, the biggest moment. After the car crashes, Jimmy does two very interesting things. First, he drinks his own piss, which is something he said he would not do earlier. And it's a symbol of degradation in a way, because he's not just drinking it to survive here, he drinks his piss like it's normal water. There's not a big reaction of disgust. And that was an instruction, no doubt about it. Secondly, he dumps the tinfoil blanket in the dirt, allowing it to be stepped on by Mike and destroyed by the elements. This is Jimmy completely divorcing himself from Chuck. He isn't trying to prove Chuck wrong and become a good lawyer. He's saying, screw him, I'm doing my own thing. And in these last two episodes, I expect to see some pretty nasty behavior from Jimmy, or Saul Goodman now. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. And subscribe if you want to hear my reaction to the final two episodes. Try to stay healthy, and hopefully I will talk to you soon. Have a good one.